Hi everybody, my name is Brian Anderson and I'm here today to tell you about evolution because that's the assignment for this week and I'm going to do it so I don't fail. So one of the first proponents of the theory was a guy named Anaximander, who was a Greek scientist in ancient Greece. In his system, a mix of earth and water evolved to become a fish, and then the fish would crawl out on land and then it would burst. And that's where the first humans came from, because they believed in the idea that a young child needs a protective cradle, which is what the fish was. However, his theory wasn't really accepted at the time due to being against the major beliefs of people like Aristotle and the other major philosophers. Later, a guy named Empedocles, I think that's how you say his name, had a similar theory but believed that various parts arose and then combined together in seemingly random combinations. So there would be eyes without a head and hands without arms, and they would combine in various combinations. Much later, a guy named Jean-Baptiste Lamarck proposed his theory of the inheritance of acquired characteristics, which say that creatures pass their practice characteristics to the next generation. So an animal like a giraffe, like if it had a short neck, would stretch and stretch and stretch to reach higher foods, and then its neck would get longer, and then it would pass that longer neck to its children, who could then get an even longer neck and so down the family line. Later, a guy named Herbert Spencer applied this theory to humanity and believed that humans that practiced stuff like intelligence would have more viably intelligent offspring, or that at least the capability would be there, which is beginnings of eugenics. And then he came up with the concept of survival of the fittest, which Darwin would later adopt. And now on to Darwin, who is the man. He was a terrible student, which is nicely indicative of where I'm going to go in life. Comedy. He boarded the HMS Beagle as a naturalist, and the captain of the ship hoped to disprove evolution, which had at one point been proposed by Darwin's grandfather, Erasmus. On this journey, they happened upon the Galapagos Islands, and Darwin found a bunch of finches, iguanas, and tortoises, and then he just kind of threw all of his specimens in one sack without labeling them, which was a terrible idea, and then that made a major source of strife for him later. When he returned home, he donated all of his specimens to research and then forgot about them until one of his friends, another researcher, came in excitedly and said that none of these species of finch have ever been seen before. He then began developing his theory in earnest, and it didn't take off, but in 1859 he published his On the Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, and it kind of blew up. And trivia, he never mentioned finches in that book. He talked a lot about barnacles, though, and he hated barnacles because they were very variable. Anyway, his main theory proposed three main tenets of how species change through generation. First was variation, which states that all given individuals of a species are variable in some way that makes them more or less viable for survival. Second was heredity, which states that traits are passed down from parent to child in all species. And third was natural selection, which states that traits that are viable will be selected for, and traits that are not will be selected against. Whether this means inability to survive, so I don't know, a bright orange zebra or something probably might not survive as much as a black and white one, or whether it's unattractive to members of the same species. That's what I got for you from the book and or lecture and other outside resources, but because I like this stuff, I'm going to keep talking. There's a study that's been going on for over 40 years. It started in 1973 by Peter and Rosemary Grant, and it's in the Galapagos Islands on the island of Daphne Major. Basically they went over and started studying Darwin's finches and have been doing it 6 months out of every year for the last 48 years, question mark. And they were able to see evolution occur by the generation, which is cool because it actually has a lot more variability in between generations than over a long period of time, because it's a lot more gradual. So it actually looks like this, but average makes it look like this. And then they found that mere millimeters of a difference in beak size could spell the survival or death of a specific finch. And then they began to know the birds personally and could recognize them by sight. There's a book written about them. It got a Pulitzer Prize, and that's what I got about them and this. So I'll see y'all in 2 weeks when I do my next one. Okay, bye. Toodles.